Are you ready to uncover the truth about people leadership? Many aspiring leaders step into the role for all the wrong reasons. It could be money, it could be career progression, or simply being asked to. But what truly defines exceptional leadership, and how do we know if it's right for us? Whitney Faires, an internationally recognized coach, keynote speaker, and leadership expert, will deep dive with us into the leadership dilemma with insights that could redefine your career path. Today, we're also going to be joined with by co-host Josh LeQuire. Everybody hopefully by now already knows Josh. He's pretty freaking awesome, and he's going to help us break down some, not all, some of the Salesforce spring release notes for 2025. And we introduce a new segment to our show, the AI Spotlight. So stay tuned till the end and be sure to like and subscribe.
And now, it's the Salesforce Career Show.
Okay, well, welcome, Whitney, and welcome, Josh. Josh, congratulations. You won the big spot, the hot seat here on the Salesforce Career Show. For those who might be listening to us for the very first time, maybe you can just give us a quick 15-second bio. Who are you? How long have you been in the ecosystem? And why are you even here on the show, buddy?
Well, Josh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate all the nice things you said about me. The check's in the mail. I am the founder and operator of C-Currents. We're a Salesforce consulting partner. This is the second Salesforce consulting partner I founded and led. Had the Coterie before. We're a product development outsourcing organization. I've been working at Salesforce since 2011. I've been building apps since 2003. And excited to be here to talk about Salesforce and how we can help you beef up your career and get you going in the ecosystem.
I love it. And then we've got Whitney. Whitney, we're so excited to have you here today because you have had, you've had an exceptional career so far as an executive, working in HR, working in healthcare, and you've got a pretty interesting relationship indirectly with the Salesforce ecosystem as well. So welcome to the show. Maybe I gave a little bit of a mini bio, but why don't you share the audience a little bit about what you're most passionate about and why you do what you do, helping people as a coach and a keynote speaker.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I feel like I'm sort of part of making history here with the new co-host. So I appreciate, I will try not to mess up the first episode for you, Josh.
I think you're going to be fine. Not
but,
worried.
You're already making me look a lot better. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. So, but what I'm most passionate about is helping people reach their maximum potential. And I spent, 10 years in sales and sales leadership. And I just saw so many people that were hungry for development. They had big goals for their career, but sometimes getting there is just really hard to do. And it can be very uncertain and difficult to navigate. And so after sales leadership, I hopped into an operations role, launched a finance function, and then I moved into what I was really passionate about was people. And I led an org health team and then was also chief of staff to the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. So I've kind of hopped around, and I actually think that my experience has always been do the work that inspires you, you're passionate about. Obviously, we all need to make money, but the two can coexist. But it takes a little bit of vision and intentionality to steer your career where you want to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, you can't just hope for the best. Crossing your fingers isn't the way to approach your career, and no one should approach their career like that. Some of us have been really lucky at certain stages in our life where things fell in our lap. There are all these stories of the accidental admin who worked at an organization and, maybe they were doing customer service and someone asked them to help out with Salesforce and they jumped in and they kind of wrapped their arms around it, fell in love with the product, fell in love with the kind of role and did that for years. They never intended to get into product ownership or Salesforce administration or anything like that. But then years go by and all of a sudden they're thinking, what comes next? Because maybe the next thing's not going to fall in their lap, right? They're going to have to actually do something about it. Talk if you can a little bit about that, because I think we all can recognize here, it's pretty obvious that usually we think to get more money, to get the type of fulfillment or acclaim that we want in a career, so many of us, and I certainly was one of these folks, believe that the only way there is to take your boss's job at some point. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I often see two types of people: those that are very passive about their career. They want to do more, but they don't spend a lot of time really mapping out that path. And I don't mean it has to be a 10-year plan, but just thinking about what might be the next thing or two I would look at, right? Maybe that is moving up and taking my boss's job. Maybe that's taking a lateral move that offers diversity of experience that's going to help me get ready for the job two down the road, right? So sometimes people take this passive approach where they're not sure what to do next. So they just kind of say, oh, that my career will figure itself out. And then of course you have the opposite, where either someone has over engineered them and like, I'm going to get this job by this date and this is how it's going to go, or they're getting pulled into the next role. In all those situations, the key is just really stopping to pause and say, okay, is this right for me? And just really being thoughtful about, am I ready for it? Is this the work that I like to do? And when you talk about getting pulled into your boss's job, or just, I'm just going to go do that job, I think about people leadership, and not all individual contributors are going to love the work of a people leader. It's totally different. And yes, there's certainly like transferable skills and a lot of similarities. But when you move to that people leadership role, your job is not to execute on a daily basis. Your job is to develop the people in your organization to drive better results, to drive the result, which means if you're the person that loves to get in there and run the meeting, you're going to have to pull back and be willing to prep the person, maybe sit in the meeting, add some commentary, but not just take over and run it. Because otherwise, as a leader, it's a slow, steady decline, because if everyone's dependent on you sitting in that meeting, you can't be everywhere. And so over time, your results will plateau, because
I hit that. I mean, I can tell you right now, that happened to me in my early days. You know, I thought that I'd been promoted to be a leader because of a couple of things. My sales results, my numbers were great. I went the extra mile. I ran trainings. I did these sorts of things because I really desired it. I was in my, late 20s, early 30s, chomping at the bit. I felt, here we go. Let's climb this ladder. I worked for a Fortune 500 company and was a manager there, and I wanted to be a VP. And it took it actually didn't take a lot of time to figure out my failings, because they were so obvious around me. I still felt like I was cut out for leadership, but I'd been doing it the wrong way. The idea of empowering others and helping them and putting the spotlight on them, man, that's clearly where it was at. And I felt, I think, too much of a grip around the bat. I wanted things done, but I wanted it done my way. Didn't always resonate with all of my employees. And, it's shame on me, but lesson learned. Can you talk a little bit more about what someone might need to do when let's say someone's already in that position and they're facing those challenges and they're doubting themselves? You're a coach, so I imagine you can coach people up and through it. But have you experienced in your time you're a certified professional coach. Like, I imagine that you've run into situations where you're talking to people and it's like, I got to tell you, I don't know if this is the right role for you. I don't know if this is the right job. Let's look at ways of being an individual contributor again. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I always say there's two things that most often determine success. Is someone willing to put in the work to get there is the first question. Because if there's no willingness to grow and develop and grind it out to get to where you want to be, you've got nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And the other piece is competency. There's certain times in certain roles you're like, this person, they really don't have the skills, and some of the skills aren't teachable. Mm-hmm. And so you have to really reevaluate making that move maybe back to a role that's better suited for them sooner. But aside from that, they're willing and they have baseline competencies. You can develop leaders. I mean, leadership is a learned skill. In fact, I won't get off on a tangent on this, but I will say, I think one of the biggest misses,
tangents allowed.
One of the biggest misses that I think companies make is we assume great individual contributors immediately translate into great people leaders. Like, we don't need to teach them the skill of leading people. We absolutely do. There's teaching them how to manage the business, and there's teaching them how to lead people. There are two different verticals of skill sets that typically people leaders will grow into as they get more experience and more development. And so oftentimes we say, they're great. They've been in business a long time, great business acumen, people like them, they can connect, and they're a great IC. Okay, that's a phenomenal foundation. I'll take that. But how do we teach them how to give feedback effectively? How do we teach them to create a vision that inspires people? And I could go on about the skills, but you get where I'm going with it,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
completely.
And so like when I see somebody, and believe me, I've had them. I've had people that are like, I was running after this job for years. I get it. And I'm thinking, what did I do? Like, I hate the day-to-day of this. I'm sitting there watching people make mistakes. And so I think part of it is first understanding, okay, what was your expectation of the job? Because sometimes I got to provide the harsh reality that is not what a people leadership role is. You're not just brought in to run the meeting, close the deal, and then out you go. You're a problem solver. I mean, people leadership is basically a lot of ongoing problem solving, developing your people, diagnosing the skills that they need to improve, to be better at their jobs. Obviously, figuring out what's going on in the business when you're not always front and center with the customer because you have a whole team. And so helping them understand, okay, what really does people leadership look like is a great start. And then we have to assess their skills. And a lot of times I do that through getting feedback from them, from their leaders, from their direct reports, and then going, of course, benchmarking their level of experience. And I can ask them questions to understand, okay, how good are they at coaching employees? What is their strategy? Do they have a process? So then we can work on actually building those skills to be successful. And I
that
just
makes
think,
sense. I'm just going to jump in here for a second, Whitney, real quick, because everything you're sharing, I mean, it's brilliant stuff and it all makes sense. But what about those folks? I mean, how would you address our audience today so that they as individuals, like, not everybody can afford a great coach, and not everybody,
for sure.
even if they can afford it, they might find that they're a little bit resistant to it, and it may take them months to open up, right? Everyone's a little bit different. What can someone do today to kind of go through a little bit of a checklist or a process to truly understand who they are? I'm a huge fan. Everybody who listens to this show knows that I'm a huge fan of people taking personal accountability, right? Like really like owning their stuff, and also just understanding who they are. Like, do you know who you actually are? Do you understand your behaviors, your patterns, what you like, what you don't like? So with that in mind, what are some tactics, I suppose, that people can apply to figuring this out when they don't have a Whitney Faires in their, on their roster of advisors?
Yeah. So first thing I'd encourage them to do is ask, let me narrow it down to like 3 questions.
Great.
Am I energized by developing people? Is that something that I think I'm excited about the opportunity to get on the phone every day or be with my team every day and help them grow versus take over the business? So that's number 1. How interested am I in shifting from the star player to the team player, the supporter? Because that's the reality of people leadership. When your people are shining, you stand behind them. And when they are facing fire, you stand in front of them. That's your job. Ultimate accountability. They get the glory. You take the hits. How does that resonate with you? And then can you redefine what success looks like? When we're individual contributors, oftentimes we have all these metrics and we can really see clearly how's it going. We can manage the business really tightly, whatever our job is. And all of a sudden, success looks like the growth of your people. It looks like the wins in their business. It isn't this one-to-one correlation. So am I good with that? Do I feel like I'm in a place where that is something that challenge inspires me? And so that, I think, tells you a little bit more about, is this something that's right for me right now? And I say right now, because it might not be that today is where you feel like making that shift. You love what you do, fine. But in the future, kind of use that as a bit of your compass, if you will. And then, once you jump into that role, there are core skills in people leadership, right? Being able to coach people. So you see them do something, they're talking about going into a meeting. How do you coach and guide them, right? Coaching, giving feedback. We've all had someone that gives us really harsh feedback, and that doesn't feel good, and we're resistant. And we have someone that knows how to give it to us, so it's specific, it's actionable, and we know what behavior we're going to do differently.
Well, it's very hard to be able to coach others if you've never been coached, right? It's
True.
really difficult. Anyone can become a manager, right? And anyone can be promoted to leadership, but they can't necessarily be effective in either role if they haven't
Yes.
had the right behaviors modeled for them. So do you recommend people who are sort of on that cusp of like, wow, I really want to go for it. They've answered, I'm happy to redefine my success. I'm energized by helping people. I don't need to be the star player. I'm happy to be the supporter. Now I need to get there, right?
Mhm.
Do you think that getting involved with a personal coach is one of the best ways to go if they don't have that mentor on site with their organization?
Yeah. I would say, as much as I'd love, to say coaching is the number one thing, you don't have to have that.
Yeah,
It's helpful, but there's two things that you can easily do. We all have seen great leaders in our organizations or in organizations we've previously worked for. I rarely see leaders that when someone comes and says, I'm stepping into this job and I need to learn a few things from you. Can I get 30 minutes every, month or so to ask you some
sure.
questions? That's number one. I encourage people, if they're thinking about a people leadership role or they've just stepped into one, look on who the top performers are, or you can ask somebody in your organization and just call those people up. We all have drive time to work. We're, taking a walk, where we have dead time between meetings. You can pick up the phone and say, hey, look, I'm new to this role and I want to be excellent at it. And I hear you're great. Can I learn from you? And I always say, just come with some specific questions. Like what has been the top 2 skills that have helped you be successful as a people leader? Great. How do you do that? And you can start a base of knowledge that way. And then of course, like you can on LinkedIn learning, you can Google it. You find all these thought leaders. There's a
Or
lot of just,
Perplexity. I'm going to strongly recommend people do this on perplexity.ai. It has been for me and many people that I've kind of turned them on to it, like such a game changer. And I'm going to drop a little bit. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, Whitney, but I want to drop a little thing that I learned just yesterday from the he's an amazing guy. It's David Giller. He was on our show 2 years ago. He's a friend. He's recently moved to Tel Aviv this last summer. Most people will know him through his organization Brainiate and as a thought leader on Salesforce and AI. We were catching up yesterday. I was on a little walk and I thought, I'm going to give David a call. And he was talking about building a GPT where you're basically uploading anything that you can find for free around one specific thought leader. If they've got PDFs of transcripts, if they've got ebooks that you can upload, and you can put them all into the AI, and you just give it instructions. Anytime I prompt inside here, I want you to act as the person who wrote all of this information, and you can have this body of knowledge where people can go. Again, I'm sorry, this is AI spotlight oriented stuff, but I think it's apropos when we're thinking about really creative ways to capture information and have it readily available. You can say, today, someone raised their voice. I didn't know what to do, blah, 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 blah. What would you have done? And you might be shocked at how clear and successful the response is if you actually take that advice. So I'm going to
Josh, I'm going to back you up on that actually, because you did ask the question to Whitney earlier, how do folks help themselves at home if they don't have a Whitney Faires? And honestly, this technology is so prevalent and available. That's an excellent idea to get an outside perspective. I think, Whitney, I want to call out something you had mentioned before. And, I'm thinking about leadership from all these different dimensions, right? It's the subject matter expertise, it's the passion, it's the ability to develop talent, to recognize talent as well, to bring that into the organization and retain talent. It's the ability to enable people. We work in our world in Salesforce development. You're either an employee inside of a company that's providing business analysis, solution architecture, development type solutions, very kind of technical solutions that meet business needs and requirements, or you're working for a consultancy, and that can be a smaller business like mine, that's not an Accenture or KPMG or Capgemini, or it could be one of those or something in between, right? So I do think, there are all these different kinds of dimensions. What company am I working in? What kind of opportunities do those present? Is leadership right for me? Is it not? But I do think you hit on the right notes here, that leadership, and I really learned this when I started getting into leadership roles in my career. And of course, now going into business and kind of more of the entrepreneurial lens and kind of smaller business lens, you have to really love what you're doing. And you have to really understand how to put people in places to succeed, how to build systems for them to succeed. And you have to be a good listener, right? When you want people, you talked about great leaders and modeling their behavior and learning a lot from them. The greatest leaders I've ever worked for were compassionate, humble, how are you doing? What can I do to help you? Kind of servant leaders to an extent. And I'm not familiar with the latest terminology, and not sure if that's kind of, sort of out of date. My kids tell me all the time I use all the wrong language and wrong lingo. So I'm sure I'm doing it here, but yeah, exactly. But that growth mentality, I think, that's personally important to me, right? Like when I have teams that I'm working with, whether it's even my client teams, or even the teams that work here at C Currents, or we work with in partnership, it's, hey, how can we find what we're passionate about, what objective we can rally around? How can we set the path forward for everybody to succeed? How can we look ahead and know what we're trying to achieve and make sure we're tracking progress, and also giving each other honest feedback about what's working and what's not working, right? So I really do like that you called that out, because I think that's in our business, when you have, especially on the technical side, you got people developing applications, or maybe even people on the sales side. I have to, get into a management role and succeed. Josh and I were talking about this earlier, and a lot of people I work with will recognize this, because we talk about this all the time. The best way to ruin a developer is to promote him or her to manager position, right? Like I've seen this happen countless times, where we've taken a really good technical expert, put them in a people role, and it's like, oh, what do I do? Wait, I got to manage performance. I've got to help enable people. I've got to do all this. So really just calling out, I do think, what you've called out here is very wise sage advice. And for folks who are listening in the work that we do, take that into consideration, because it does take passion. It does take looking around the corners. It does take, how can I help my team and enable it to succeed?
It does.
I want to echo that.
You're going to have a lot more energy for the work when you actually care about it. Like it's as simple as that. I wanted to ask you, Whitney, most people are familiar with the Peter principle, and I always botch it, right? I always botch what it is. So I pulled it up, and it is a blah, 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 blah. Basically, people are promoted, right, to their to a level of incompetence, right? I mean, you're familiar with that, I'm assuming. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? I know you've seen it, right? You were an executive, of course you've seen it, and I think about a lot of the folks that I saw back when I was working in corporate America. It's like someone did well in sales, now they're a manager. This person did well in sales, now they're a manager. This one person did good operationally in technology, now they're an architect, or they're running a PMO, and nobody liked them anyway, but they were just really good because they saved time and they were on budget, right? But then people start bailing under them. Can you talk a little bit about the Peter principle, so that everybody really understands, and maybe a story or something of where you've seen it, and how this shows for people who are thinking about being leaders, but it's also for leaders. We have a lot of people who are leaders who listen to this program, and they're ultimately the ones responsible for the promotions. It's on them to an extent to have done a quality evaluation of these employees. It's not like I'm going to be a leader now, and now I'm a leader. Someone has to give you the thumbs up. What can leaders do to protect these people's careers and ensure that they're actually engaged in the right kind of work for their personality, their behavioral style, their skill set, and where they are in life?
Yeah. So there's a lot there. I would say, first of all, the biggest risk is that we promote people that we like, or we promote them because they have this track record and we're like, they're just a winner. They're just a winner. They're going to win at the next job.
Mhm.
They will. And they may win. And they may win by doing it well. And they may win by, like you said, they aren't somebody that people want to work for. Or sometimes there's a bias involved in there. And you have to watch out for that too. So I think one of the things I always suggest for leaders is before you look at who do I want to put in this role, define the person you need. And typically we're talking about if you're moving into a management role, the person above you is leading a lot of other people leaders. So they should be stopping and looking at what actually does my team need, because my team needs diversity of thought and experience at some level. I'm not saying there isn't a bunch of core skills, right? But what does my team need as far as the people leader community? And then in this role, what is really needed? And, that's the skills, that's maybe the attributes, things like the level of energy or the perspective or the experience that person brings. And so when you define that first, without immediately jumping and going, oh, hey, this person, that woman, this guy, they're all high performers. We're gonna see if they want the role, and we're gonna tap them on the shoulder. Then we have some relatively objective as you can be, criteria that we said these are important. And then, hey, let's go talk to people, but we need to compare them against those criteria versus letting our emotions or the pressure that sometimes comes even higher or sideways from people saying, you got to put this person in the role. They're amazing. Right. So
Thank
that's
God, some like this is wisdom. People need to hear this stuff. I mean, I hope this episode blows up. And that thing you just said right now, because the two things, my biggest two takeaways right now, and there's a lot because you're very experienced, very wise, very smart. But if I'm going to synthesize the main thing, it's think before you act, right? It's like put a little bit of it's fine to have a roadmap, but you've got to have a destination first. And you have to understand what you want it to be like when you get there. You don't do that, you're screwed, like you really are, or at least you're rolling the dice, and you're playing against the house too. Like the odds are not in your favor. I mean, the statistics show, what is it? 48% of people aren't at the job that they started 18 months later. That's a horrendous record, right?
Yeah.
Whitney, I've got a question for you. With that in mind, there's obviously the strategic look ahead for the company, the position, the role, the capability for leadership. How much is it incumbent upon the organization to develop the leader if they're promoting them into the role versus finding the leader with that skill set? I'm really curious to get your perspective on that, because I think a lot of times when we promote people because of relationships or for other factors, we kind of ignore the fact that this person will need development just like the people on my team that I need to develop in their roles. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, let's hear that.
Yeah. So, well, I think as an organization, we always have the core responsibility for making sure when we change somebody's career path, and hey, that means their life, because most of us are making money. Like, we love our work, but we're making money to support somebody or do something that's important to us too. We owe it to that person to create some sort of structure to foster their success. Now, absolutely, like, not every company, especially small companies, are going to have some beautiful development program that holds everyone's hand through all the skills that they need. That's not realistic, and I get that. But we, as the hiring manager, should be able to have an outline of a plan for the skills we're going to develop. But first, we have to assess those skills because they might have some of those skills. But the diagnosis of skills, our plan for how we're going to develop them into the role. So if it's not a program, it should be a group of mentors with specific guidance as to skills they should help them through. It should be the leader always. Even if the program's in place, it should still be the leader. And so I would say that the one thing I'd say too is what's really tough about leaders hiring other people leaders is that the best way you can coach and guide people that work for you, whether they're an IC or a leader, is to observe them doing whatever you're trying to coach them on, right? So if I want to see how good somebody is at hiring top talent, I mean, yeah, I look at their track record, but I actually want to look at things like I want to do an interview with them. I want to watch them do an interview and co-interview somebody so I can see how they're thinking and what they're asking. And that's what can make it really hard when you're hiring people leaders is you don't have the ability to necessarily see them and all those skill sets to judge their readiness. But what that means is when they join your team, how do you find little opportunities? If you can't observe directly, you're kind of breaking down how they've done things in their day to day in a way that's inquisitive, not micromanagement. Because I know it's probably where people's heads go is like, I don't need someone asking me all about my day. But there's a way that good leaders can do it so they can figure out how confident are they in doing this? Because I want them to be successful. And so that's one thing I would add in for all the leaders out there. How do you know people are good at the aspects of people leadership unless you're understanding how they're doing it or seeing it?
It's so smart. I mean, we used to just say like, look under the covers, like see what's going on. Right. And they're actually the education system, a lot of the grade schools and even high school and even college now, they want to see your work. Right. When I jumped on this little AI dev project, which if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, but you can check it out. I built a little website for one of my sons. And, when I was in there and getting things done, you can ask, like, can you explain this? Like, explain the logic behind this decision, and it'll show you. And that's what they're doing in the schools nowadays. It's like 2 + 2 is 4. It's like, okay, there's rote memory, but I want to see if you can actually synthesize the algorithm and break it down why 2 + 2 actually equals 4, right? So they're doing more and more of that. Of course, we all have calculators, so we don't need that anymore. But, it's still this idea of like, how are they coming to this? Because we can see, and I see it when I interview people, like I see it all the time. They have a great answer, but when you press, there's more great information, and you press again and it's still pretty good. And then you press again and it all falls apart. It's like the 5 whys. And actually, when you were talking just now, talking about observation, it made me think of this book. What is it? The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team?
Yes. I've read that book.
Yeah. So you've read that. And I don't remember the entire book, but I do remember at the beginning, basically this, person gets hired and goes in and for 2 weeks keeps his trap shut. And he just watches, and there's, the bad apple in the corner messing around and grumbling. And he just wanted to see how it all worked before he even put his foot down. So critical. I'd just been promoted to national director of the Bayside Group's tech staff down in Australia. And I went down and it wasn't huge, but I had 3 offices of scientific recruiters, right? Chemists and this sort of stuff. And I went in and I met with one of the owners, and he gave me specific instructions. Move this guy here, do this, do that, do this, do that. And it was my first time. They didn't know me from Adam. They'd seen some emails from me because I'd only been with the company maybe a month up in Brisbane. And I went in and I did what my boss told me. I didn't know to push back. And I went in and I started making changes. And boy, that was a rough start. Like, I got through it, but I lost everyone's respect very quickly. They had already lost mine. No offense to some of them, but they'd already lost mine. Their numbers were terrible. Their work habits weren't good. Sorry, guys, but it wasn't good. And so I went in, with my sledgehammer, and it took a while to bring it all back, So when you're a new leader, settling in, taking a breath, slow it down, figure it out, observe, and don't rush the results. Generally, in my experience, painful experience is more likely how you're going to bear the most fruit from that specific team. I'm kind of wondering if you'd like to share with everybody, Whitney, where they can find out more information about you, and then also some final words. People, this show is not over, right? We're going to keep going, but we are going to dive a little bit into some of the Salesforce spring release and some AI spotlight stuff. And Whitney, I hope that you'll stick around, and love to get your perspective on some of these things. But do you have is there something that we haven't covered so far that you believe would be really super important for people who've been sitting with us for this long to take away and do something with?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say in response to the point that you just made, that you highlight something really important, that you are going to make mistakes as a people leader. We all do. I like you. I went into my first people leadership role and I didn't do it right, and it stung, but you can recover. And so we've talked about all the challenges of people leadership. I'll leave you with this: if you are motivated to do it and willing to learn, you can do it. We make it sound hard because it is really hard. There's no formula for success because you're leading human beings in a dynamic environment. And so you have to be able to flex and adjust. But the reality is, if you're tapped on the shoulder for that job and you want to do it, or it's something you're working towards, you're building your skills, believe in yourself and be committed to just grinding it out until you get to a place where you feel as confident as a people leader as you are in that role that you're in today. And I will cap it off with saying, it is a journey. You are not going to go from where you are to then a quarter or two or even a year later being your boss. You're not. There is an evolution. And so continuous improvement is what it's all about. And just continuing to elevate your skills and grow, right? Be someone that people want to work for. So I appreciate you having me. I will stick around. You can always find me at whitneyfaires.com. Tons of information about all the services that I offer, and you can reach out to me there as well. And of course on LinkedIn. I'd love for you to follow me and see some of the content I'm putting out around leadership and being at your best.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Whitney.
Definitely connect with Whitney. Go ahead and hit her up. You can follow her or connect with her on LinkedIn. Be sure to do that. And we're going to now dive into Salesforce Spring Release Notes. And this is not going to be a fully comprehensive thing, but merely just a couple things that Josh found very helpful. Josh LeQuire. It's going to be a little weird with two Joshes up here. Fair enough. But I
need
think
nicknames, Josh.
Yeah, right. Well, you can have a nickname. I'm gonna keep mine. Sorry, buddy. Go for it, Josh. What's going on with Salesforce Spring Release 25?
Goodness. I remember when release notes used to be, I don't know, nearly 100 pages. This one was about 880 pages long, I think, in the PDF. So lots to cover. The general themes are more AI, more agents, more Einstein capabilities. If you haven't heard yet, this is a big push by Salesforce, is to use generative AI LLMs as part of workflows. I think what was most interesting, and this will translate a little bit in a minute to the AI corner, is we're seeing more AI in the setup functions of Salesforce. So not just for sales agents and service agents to summarize and transcribe calls, to complete a set of actions, to be able to assist customers better. But now we're seeing better capabilities for administrators and developers to be able to go in and actually build applications on Salesforce. So some of those things include probably one of the bigger features is, especially for admins who are probably really like this, is you can actually use natural language prompts to generate flows. I think that's a pretty big game changer. Flows, I've seen a lot of flows. I've seen a lot of really bad flows. I've seen a lot of things that don't quite work. I actually think this could be super helpful especially for companies that don't have developers on staff, or maybe the admin is the superhero of the organization. That's pretty powerful.
And I will say we had a wonderful episode on the Joshforce channel, and you can also find it on our, on the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or whatever your favorite platform is, all about Salesforce flows. And I remember Stacy Whitaker, who was our guest of that day, talked about, sometimes some like big flows that might be an 80-hour project. It might be 120-hour project. And now with the LLMs, the LLM layer, or the generative AI chat layer involved, I mean, you can push things out really fast. And I think during AI Spotlight, I'll even give a little example. It's not on Salesforce, but stay tuned, and we will give a little bit of an example how this guy, me, the non-developer, actually was able to develop something. So what else is going on there? So we've got flows. And can I ask you, Josh, how is this going to impact SIs in general? Right? If building things are faster, we all know clients are getting slower to sign contracts. We've all seen that, right? And when they finally sign, they always want everything right now because they've been sitting on their thumbs for 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months longer. It's like it used to just be sign. Let's go. Post-COVID, let's go. We're gonna go. Come on. And now it's like hurry up and wait for months, sometimes a year. I mean, I get these calls from my clients all the time. So how is this layer going to help SIs deliver, awesome applications? And what's that, what are the changes that they might need to adapt to because of this?
Well, how much time do you have, Josh? Because we could talk
30
about
seconds
this.
and then we're going to ask something else. So 30 seconds. Go.
I think the short version is this is going to make us work faster and better. The platform is getting broader and broader, deeper and deeper. I don't think generative AI development capabilities are going to eliminate jobs, but make us do more in shorter periods of times. It will make the nature of changes we deploy to the business more iterative and agile. I think, things that used to take us 2 or 3 weeks will now take us minutes, and you're going to see the pace of change just go through the roof, which I think is going to make, honestly, developers and admins more valuable. There's a lot of mixed opinions. Josh, you've talked to people. We talked about it this week.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on this real quick because it's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, the reality is I ran some DeepSeek research, and I really dove into what's going to happen to careers due to AI in the next 3 years. And then I narrowed that search. This was all on Perplexity using the DeepSeek model. And by the way, I just bought learnperplexity.ai. So I don't know, maybe I'm going to do something with that. I couldn't believe it was available. I got it for $12. So it's not why I'm pitching it. I'm pitching it because I think it's the best research tool that anyone can get for about, $240 a year. Like, it's pretty amazing. But I did this big research and eventually created a decent sized blog about it. We're going to go over all of those results from that search. 4 weeks from today, 2 weeks from now, we've got an AI company that's going to be joining us, Sencha, with the 2 Davids. And it'll be 2 Davids and 2 Joshes. And then 4 weeks from now, we're going to really go over what impact AI is going to have on careers. And I have to tell people, because I feel like if I sit on it for a full month, like I'm doing everyone a disservice. I want full transparency. So let me just be really clear. If you are not getting involved in AI in any capacity right now, this does not mean you need to learn Agentforce. But if you are stumbling around and messing around with GP a little bit, but not actually learning how to use it, you will be left in the dust. The numbers are absolutely threatening for those who don't adapt. We're talking about somewhere between a 20 and 35% reduction in forces for those who don't get on the bandwagon, and anywhere from like a 20 to 40% increase in compensation for the early adopters who get involved in it now. Learn this now. You want to know how to do it? Get on Perplexity or GPT and ask it. Tell them what you do. Tell them your job, right? And say, I need help. Can you structure some training for me so I can really get my arms around all the LLMs, how I can use it in my job, and so forth. Do it today, and you will be shocked. I think everyone knows that about, I think it was 4 weeks ago or 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I can't even remember, but I committed to spending 20 hours of AI through the month of AI learning. Guess what? By the way, we're in Spring Release Notes /AI Spotlight right now. So,
thank you, Josh.
So much for that, right? So much for planning. But I have to get this message across. If you guys take one thing from anything that I say on this show, there's a lot to take from Josh and from Whitney today. If you're going to take one thing from Josh Matthews today, it's this: get on the AI bandwagon or die. And I'm not even freaking joking. We're not talking about 3 years, your job might be threatened. We're talking about a massive reduction in the next 12 months. Get on it today and don't wait. Okay, that's my soapbox. And we can go back. Do you guys want to say anything about that? Again, we're going to have a whole show on it.
I actually, Whitney, since you're here,
yeah.
What are implications for leaders with AI and leadership? I would love your take on that, because this is a hot topic in our world right now.
Yeah, it's a hot topic in my world for sure.
Yeah.
And when I launched my company and transitioned out of corporate, everyone was like, "You got to use AI." And so I actually found this guy who came as recommended to me that could teach me how to create personas in ChatGPT, how to use it, the different AI tools. And without a doubt, it has been a massive accelerator in my business. But for leaders, the ability to brainstorm different things in ChatGPT or look up things, research things in Perplexity it's real value added. It's something like you can just do it on your phone in the moment. It doesn't have to be this big, like you set aside a time and do it. It's like, hey, I need a, 3 steps to coach an employee, or, I don't know if you always want to go, how would you handle it? Because you never know what you're going to get, but there's a lot you can do by just leaning on it. It gets you thinking for sure.
Definitely. And I think people should go check out Mark Good. Mark Good and I are going to be catching up, I think tomorrow or in a couple of days, but he runs AI Force, and he can teach you through some of his courses, how to use GPT, as it relates to a Salesforce professional. By the way, guys, we're not paid for advertising here. We really try and keep it clean and just tell you like where you can go to get some help. Right. Yeah. We spend money here on this show. We don't make money, just so you know. So, but definitely do something to serve yourself and be kind to your future self by doing something for yourself with AI today. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. And I'm going to get back to release notes and AI in a minute, but I want to also piggyback a little bit on some of the stuff Whitney was saying, because I can say for me as a professional services provider, a consultant, a managed services provider, this has just transformed how I'm even able to enable my teams and build systems for my teams to succeed. And our engagements, generating documents, when we talk about requirements, user stories, solution architecture, when we talk about building backlogs, managing backlogs, stuff that honestly would take us 20, 40, 60, 80 hours, we can now do within minutes. I mean, it is a game changer. And I think what's important for me too is quality is kind of a hallmark of how we deliver for our clients. So a lot of you folks out there who work in consulting, probably it's no secret, your first consulting gig, or maybe even your 10th, whether it's a small company or a Capgemini, you get thrown to the wolves. You may ask your boss, what do I do? How do I do it? I don't know. You figure it out. Well, those days are over, because we now have agents we can deploy to help coach our team members. I have an architect agent, I have an analyst agent, I have a developer agent. Now, granted, how this is going to shape our careers and how this is going to shape our jobs is not that these things take over and do it. These things guide us. These are now the word co-pilot is actually spot on, right? These are not people who are doing the job. They're just helping us to do our job better. So these are tools for leaders left and right, in my opinion, in any job in any capacity.
Definitely. And I was at the keynote when Benioff was introducing Agentforce and at Dreamforce this last year. And, the thing that was, I don't even remember what it said. It was like agents helping humans, or it was something like that. It was something about humans and agents, or agents guided by humans. And I thought, well, that's really smart, because no one wants to feel like they're going to be displaced. Too bad you're going to be displaced, because what's going to happen is someone's going to know this stuff and you don't. And if you don't, you will be. And that's the reality, but it's okay. I mean, look, doctors aren't exactly doing taking appendix out the way they did on my dad's in 1965, right? By the time I had mine out, I guess it runs in the family, and it was 1984. I've got a scar this big, and now someone who gets it, the scar is this big. It's tiny, like it's a pinhole. You can't even see, right? So just adapt. Don't make a big deal out of it. Just get involved. And I promise you, once you start looking at this stuff, and by the way, Josh, I think that's incredible that you've created all of these agents. Like, I want to hang out with you more, and you show me what you've done, like for real, because I need to do that for myself even more. But it's just learning. All these people who are like, what's the next cert I should get? I mean, yeah, you could go get your AI specialist if you want. Like, that's fine. Or you could just spend 20 hours on something, get good at this stuff. It's just part of learning. If you've chosen a career in technology, what did you think was going to happen? Right? Like, did you think it was going to be the same? I talked to a development company. I'm helping out this one organization, and they want to get this app built. And I talked to this one organization, and it was like pulling teeth to get them to admit what kind of tech stacks they work with. I was not impressed. It's like, this stuff's 25 years old. Like, you don't have to do that. What about micro architecture? What about Rust? Like, what about Gogen and things like that? Like, come on, stay with the times. And I want to hear more about what you've got going on, but maybe we can wrap up release notes here.
Yeah,
in just a few minutes, and then we'll dive into a tiny little bit more AI, something fun that I think people will think is really cool for the average listener. And then we'll wrap up the show, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. So go for it, Josh.
Sounds great. And I promise at the end of the show, I'll give folks listening some really good things you can do at home to accelerate your workflow and get some immediate value out of AI. So we'll parking lot that for a minute. I do want to talk about release notes a little bit. The pace of change from Salesforce is getting faster and faster. The number of features are getting larger and larger. It's amazing. I think one thing I'm really excited about in these releases, and this is going to be the nerdy developer side of me and people I work with, is SLDS2, the Lightning Design System 2. This is a fresh look for Lightning at Salesforce. If you folks were watching the Dreamforce presentations and other presentations that Salesforce offers about product releases and updates, you probably noticed the UI looked a little different. I remember seeing this and thinking, man, where do I get my hands on that? Like, what is this? It's here, and it's now available for testing. So not to pile on to the AI learning and keeping up with the latest and greatest, but if you are a front-end developer, if you want to create some beautiful experiences in Salesforce, check out SLDS2. Go to lightningdesignsystem.com. You'll see it there. It is beautiful, and I'm excited about that. I think there's going to be some capabilities there. Generally speaking, to summarize the rest of what you need to know, a lot of data cloud updates, a lot of Einstein updates, a lot of Agentforce capabilities for the industries, whether you're looking at Health Cloud, Communications Cloud, and the other ones. Really take a look at those. If you watch Salesforce's admin release note videos, you'll see a lot about list views, a lot of great capabilities there. I've seen some good discussions on LinkedIn about the power of using simple solutions like list views. Those are all spot on. You don't need to over-engineer a solution if a list view can do the job. And updates to creating custom reports, or at least doing custom report types. It's a little bit nicer interface to build. So too many features to talk about. Those were a few things that stood out. I'll publish a blog post, share it out if you want to look later. And Josh, I think you're on mute.
Oh God, I'm learning this StreamYard thing, man. Like when you podcast for 4 years and all of a sudden you have to be on camera. Usually I'm sitting back in my chair with a cigar, in a t-shirt, barefoot with my feet up. This is a totally different thing. I got to shave and like, is my hair okay? No. So whatever. But I've got an idea for people that we can jump into. It's kind of tied to release notes. And I think that they might be kind of stoked to see it. So here's what I'm going to do. Now, if you're listening to the podcast, you won't be able to see it. So I'm just going to talk us through really, really quickly. It's kind of a bit of a follow-up to when Whitney and I were talking a little bit about finding a mentor, right? And so I'm going to present a blank Perplexity screen. And on this screen, you join Perplexity. You can do like a few things for free, but you can jump in here to Perplexity and click create a space. And then you can go ahead and drop in custom instructions. So this is where you would put all of your specific instructions, right? Act as if an expert on whatever you're going to upload and communicate in this style. And then once you've created that space, you click on your space. Like here, I've got one for YouTube Shorts descriptions, and I've got one for NPC writing and so on. But you can just go ahead and create a new thread inside that space and click attach file. And then you can upload, you can go ahead and upload the release notes if it's in PDF, 800 pages. And then you can ask that agent anything that you want about those release notes. Pretty amazing. What do you guys think? Something that you might do someday?
I did it already for these release notes. It
love
was easier than reading 880 pages, although I did skim through and look at the table of contents and clicked into some of the headlines. But at the end of the day, this is another productivity game. Yeah. Why sit down? Whitney, you talked about leaders constructing, agendas for meetings and putting together presentations. Man, I'll tell you, I can't remember the last time I actually sat down and spent 10 hours going slide by slide to figure out what bullet comes here, what bullet goes next. I've been using AI to do this stuff for a long time, and it does a pretty good. It's not flawless. I play more the role of editor and change things that it spits out. But man, it has taken me a lot less time, and I love it.
That's great. The efficiency gains are tremendous. And I totally agree. You throw something big in there and you ask the questions, you get the summary, and I mean, it saves you so much time, and you're able to pull in different perspectives. I get the release notes, so I'm taking a different approach. Like if you throw a couple things in there and you have it summarize key themes, like you can draw on some great information with a fraction of the investment of time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Amen. Guys, can I show you something fun? Again, I already alluded to it at the start. I've already created a separate video. It wasn't on the podcast, but I think it'd be kind of fun for our audience, at least those that are rewatching this on LinkedIn Live, the event, which you can check it out. You can follow me, follow Josh, follow Whitney. And I definitely recommend following Joshforce. Honestly, I don't love my channel too much. We're going to change the thumbnails. We're going to reorganize it. I've got people working on it right now. But what I do want to share is this pretty dope thing called lovable.dev. And let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. The first thing I'm going to share is what I actually built. And what I built was a little app called mayonnaise.com, as in John Mayer mayonnaise. And this is an app for my son John Mayer, he plays guitar and drums and a little bit of piano. John Mayer's his favorite artist. And my friend Mike McCuna told me about lovable.dev. And so I jumped on and I just said, hey, I want to build this app and this is what it can do. And it just said, great, let's start building it. And it started going off. And so in here, you can jump to all of the different albums. You can go to your favorite songs. You can pop out the chords, and you can even go, you can click a button to go directly to a different page of the lyrics. You can pop out the scales. It tells you the scales and the key that it's in. There's a night mode, which is great. And then you can sort it however you want, by title or by albums, all albums and so forth. So it's not a very robust app. But for someone who just wants to, like, imagine you're a busker and you just need to remember what the key changes are, it's kind of cool. So I wanted to share that. And I did that inside of lovable.dev, which is, here, I'll show you real quick because it's pretty dope. Present, here we go.
I think that's really awesome, Josh. And you reminded me I need to go book my Dead and Company shows at the Sphere before they stop playing there.
Yeah, man. Ollie actually went to that. I think it was this summer. He went out and saw the Dead and Friends. So here, I've scrolled it to the very top, and I just said, can you create a guitar tab app that is just for one musician, John Mayer? And it said, yeah, I can do it. Features for the first version, design elements, and here it is. And now I'm just saying, like, okay, tabs didn't populate. Let's do this instead. I'm barely talking to it. Great. Add 20 more songs, remove the text about looking for full lyrics, blah, 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 blah. And it's just building it, the whole time. So check out lovable.dev. Give yourself, look, as a very good friend of mine, I was talking to him yesterday. He was in Dubai. So I got to talk to my friend in Tel Aviv. I got to talk to my buddy in Dubai. and we were talking about other development projects, and he's like, Josh, you're not a web developer, like, or you're not a developer, like, have fun with it, but like, don't kill yourself. But our audience is, you guys make stuff, you know? And personally, I found it to be as fun as like getting hooked on a Harry Potter video game or something. Like, it was like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to like keep rolling. Right. So check that out. Any thoughts or comments before we wrap up? We are at the hour. Whitney, last words.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to need AI to teach me how to play the guitar so I can use your app. Because we all know it can do that.
There's an app for that.
Well, the last thing I'd say is my motto for a very long time has been dream the dream, build the plan, and bet on yourself in big ways. So whatever it is, AI or leadership, whatever it is, I'd say go chase it, but do it with intentionality.
I love it. Thank you. Very,
write that down. Dream the dream, bet on yourself. And
yeah, that's a massive motto. I love that thing. What about you, Josh? Again, welcome to your first episode as co-host. I hope you had fun.
Oh, I had a blast. We could geek out on this stuff all day long. I love the topic of leadership. Thank you, Whitney. Your insights have been incredibly valuable. I've written down a lot of notes, and you've reminded me to think of some things I need to think of in terms of listening a bit more and being able to develop people a little more. I have a problem, especially as a small business owner, doing way too much. That's a persistent challenge of mine. So thank you for helping me to work through that. So I think the last thing I'll say, Josh, what you did with mayonnaise is the direction companies are going. This is why it's important to understand AI. For example, if you're a marketer, the old school approach is run an ad to a landing page, capture some leads, and hope it works. Or send an email blast out to a segment of your database.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's going to be tomorrow? Creating an interactive experience, deploying a website, click, done. So the times are changing. You know, it's there's a lot of this going on. So I love seeing you do what you did. I hope it inspires people.
I love it, guys. Thank you for listening to the Salesforce Career Show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Sencha, the two Davids from Sencha. And be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, Whitney Faires. You've been awesome. Thank you, Josh LeQuire. We'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.